In 8 years, Salt Lake City hosts the Winter Olympics. And right now, while most people are still thinking of it as a ski town, this city is quietly dropping $4 billion to completely reinvent itself before the world shows up. 5 megaprojects, 5 bets, one city that knows it can't afford to look small in front of 3 billion viewers. Here's what's being built, what's at stake, and the one thing that could make all of it fall apart. Let's set the stage. The 2034 Winter Olympics are coming back to Salt Lake City. The city hosted once before, in 2002, but that was a different era. In 2034, the eyes don't just show up on TV, they live online. And when a billion people are watching your city move, the infrastructure either holds or it doesn't. Salt Lake City leadership understood this immediately. They're not making the same mistakes as 2002. So Salt Lake City isn't just preparing for 2 weeks of winter sports. It's using the Olympic deadline as the forcing function to complete a decade of urban transformation. And the 5 projects driving that transformation are not decorative. They're structural. They're about whether this city can move, house, and welcome millions of people at a level it's never operated at before. Project 1, Delta Center Expansion. Start with the anchor. The Delta Center has been Salt Lake City's main arena since 1991, home of the Utah Jazz. It's also the centerpiece of the 2034 Olympic plan, the venue where figure skating and short track will run in front of the world. But the current building can't carry that moment. Not at Olympic scale, not on Olympic broadcast quality, not with 2034 expectations. So the plan is a $900 million expansion and full modernization. New exterior, expanded footprint, upgraded seating, a complete rethink of how the surrounding blocks connect to the arena district. We're talking about turning a standalone building into an urban destination that works on a Tuesday in February and on the opening night of the Games. The win condition here isn't a beautiful building, it's atmosphere. The difference between watching a figure skating event in a place that feels electric and watching it in a place that feels like a renovation project. Broadcast picks that up instantly. So does a packed crowd. And beyond the Olympics, this is downtown Salt Lake City's bet on becoming a genuine entertainment hub. The projects around the Delta Center, restaurants, hotels, public plazas, only work if the arena anchors the energy. Get this wrong, and you just built an expensive building. Get it right, and you get a permanent shift in how the city's downtown feels every single night of the year. Project 2, the Green Loop. Now the thing that looks like a park but is actually an infrastructure move. The Green Loop is a 5.5-mile continuous linear park that would encircle downtown Salt Lake City. Think of it like a green necklace. Connected paths, bike lanes, public space, trees, seating, woven through the urban grid so that moving through downtown on foot or by bike becomes something people actually want to do. This matters more than it looks. Salt Lake City has the same problem almost every mid-sized American city has. Downtown was built for cars. Getting from one part of the core to another requires either driving or accepting that the pedestrian experience is going to be mediocre at best. The Green Loop changes the geometry. Suddenly, the arena connects to the convention center, connects to the neighborhoods, connects to the waterfront on continuous human-scale infrastructure. Visitors don't need a car to feel the city. Athletes staying in the Olympic Village can move through a city that feels designed for people. And here's the long-term math. Cities that build this kind of public realm infrastructure consistently see property values rise along the corridor, new businesses follow the foot traffic, and residents actually use downtown instead of driving around it. The Green Loop isn't a luxury. It's the connective tissue that determines whether all the other projects feel like one city or 5 isolated construction zones that happen to be near each other. Project 3, FrontRunner Transit Upgrade. Every Olympic city eventually faces the same question. You built the venues, you built the hotels, but how do you move 100,000 people from their accommodations to the events and back without the entire transportation network collapsing under its own weight? Salt Lake City's answer is FrontRunner, the regional commuter rail system that already connects Salt Lake City to Provo in the south and Ogden in the north. The upgrade plan would dramatically increase frequency, modernize the fleet, improve station connections, and potentially add new stops that directly serve Olympic venue corridors. The win condition for this project is simple and brutal. The first morning of the Olympics, when every venue is running simultaneously and the roads are full. If FrontRunner carries that load and people get where they're going, nobody writes about the transit system because it worked. If it bends, if trains are delayed, if the transfers are confusing, that becomes the story. And in 2034, that story travels globally in about 4 minutes. But this project isn't just about 2 weeks in February 2034. Salt Lake City's population is growing. The Wasatch Front Corridor, the stretch from Provo through Salt Lake to Ogden, is adding people faster than the roads can absorb. FrontRunner, done properly, becomes the backbone of how this region moves for the next 30 years. The Olympics give this project its deadline, but the daily commuter in 2035 is why it actually matters. Project 4. Astra Tower. Here's the one that changes the skyline. Astra Tower is a proposed mixed-use skyscraper that would become the tallest building in Utah. A high-rise with residential units, hotel space, office floors, and ground-level retail stacked in a single tower rising above. Downtown Salt Lake City. On paper, it's a real estate development. In practice, it's a signal, because skylines communicate. They tell visitors arriving on a plane or driving in from the highway something about the ambition of the place they're about to enter. Salt Lake City's skyline has been modest relative to its regional importance. For a city that anchors one of the fastest-growing metro areas in the United States, the built environment has often undersold the economic reality. Astra Tower says something different. It says this is a city with vertical ambitions. It says the density that makes urban living work, and the density that supports transit, supports local retail, supports the kind of walkable downtown the Green Loop is trying to create, is finally being taken seriously. The risk with a project like this is timing. A tower of this scale takes years to develop and longer to fill. If Salt Lake City's growth trajectory continues, the demand is there. If economic conditions shift before construction completes, you end up with a landmark that tells the wrong story. But as an Olympic statement, a new skyline defining the city that the world will see in 2034, the timing, if it holds, is almost perfect. Project 5. Ski resort overhauls. And then there's the reason Salt Lake City gets the Olympics in the first place. The snow. The Wasatch Mountains receive some of the best powder on Earth. Alta, Solitude, Snowbird. These are not just Utah's ski resorts. They're world-class venues with reputations that precede them in every serious ski market on the planet. But Olympic-level competition has Olympic-level requirements. Lift capacity, snowmaking backup systems, athlete staging facilities, media infrastructure, accessibility for hundreds of thousands of spectators coming from countries where mountain travel is not routine. The overhaul plans across all 3 resorts are about bringing that infrastructure to the standard that 2034 demands, while also not destroying the character that made these mountains special in the first place. That's a harder balance than it looks. Alta has historically resisted development pressure. Solitude earned its name. Snowbird is massive but built for a specific kind of skier. The challenge for each resort is upgrading without homogenizing. Because if you sand down the edges of what makes each mountain distinct in order to make them Olympics ready, you win the broadcast and lose the soul. The wind condition. The first Olympic alpine event where everything runs on time, the snow conditions are right, and the broadcast crew runs out of things to complain about. That's a clean execution. Now the part the investment brochures skip. Salt Lake City is building all 5 of these projects inside the same decade. That's not a schedule, that's a compression. And compression in construction has a cost, in labor, in materials, in sequencing mistakes that become expensive problems. There's also the housing question that doesn't get asked loudly enough. Every major infrastructure upgrade, every new tower, every revitalized district drives up the value of surrounding land. And when land values rise in a city that's already feeling affordability pressure, the people who got pushed out to make room for the Olympic city are not the ones who benefit from it. This is the same trap that has caught every Olympics host city to some degree. You build a world-class destination. You price out the community that lived there. You host 2 weeks of games. And then you spend a decade figuring out who the city was actually built for. Salt Lake City has time to avoid that. But avoiding it requires intentional decisions that are harder to make than cutting a ribbon on a new arena. And then there's the question of execution trust. Like Toronto's Eglinton saga, Salt Lake City residents have seen delayed projects before. Announcements are easy. The shovel in the ground is easy. What's hard is delivering on time, on budget, in a way that actually changes how the city feels to the people who live there. Salt Lake City in 2034 could be one of 2 things. It could be the city that used the Olympic deadline to complete a decade of real transformation. A downtown that finally connects, a transit system that actually moves people, mountain venues that set the global standard, and a skyline that matches the ambition of what's happening here. Or it could be a city that built impressive things for 2 weeks and then spent years answering the question of who those things were really built for. The projects are real. The investment is real. The deadline is real. The question is whether the execution matches the scale of what's being promised. Because the world is showing up in 2034, and Salt Lake City won't get a second first impression.